and the fact that
Touch TV News Channel. The best.
The Independent Investigative Panel on the alleged corruption, abuse of power, torture, cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment against Nigerian Correctional Service. The third public hearing of the Independent Investigative Panel on alleged corruption and other violations against Nigerian Correctional Service, held at Transcorp Hilton Hotel, Abuja, day 1, 11 August 2025. The chairperson, Dr. Magdalene Ajani, the chairperson of Independent Investigative Panel on alleged corruption and other violations against the Nigerian Correctional Service, following the recommendation as the investigative panel gained momentum on the methodology and overview. Victor Valentine, Touch TV.
so I think there has to be
Center for Empowerment and Growth.
present. I cannot tell you that I'll remember all that was mentioned by the previous speaker, but I acknowledge every one of you, members of the investigative panel, and my dear colleagues from the Ministry of Interior and Nigerian Correctional Service. Good morning and welcome to this third public hearing of the Independent Investigative Panel on alleged corruption, abuse of power, and other violations against the Nigerian Correctional Service. As we gather here today, we continue a solemn but necessary process, a process driven by a collective resolve to ensure that the Nigerian Correctional Service operates in line with the highest standard of integrity, professionalism, and respect for the rights and dignity of all persons. The first and second public hearings of this panel provided important insights into the nature, scope, and patterns of the allegations brought before us. They also reaffirmed the complexity of the issues and the deep need for systemic reforms. The task before us in this third hearing is to build on those findings, deepen our investigations, and ensure that the truth is brought to light. The focus of this third public hearing will be on thematic issues. Kindly note that the mandate of this panel is clear. 1, to examine allegations of corruption, abuse of power, human rights violation, and other forms of misconduct against officials and institutions of the Nigerian Correctional Service. 2, to identify systemic gaps and weaknesses that enable such misconduct. And 3rd, to recommend actionable measures for accountability, redress, and reform. I would like to emphasize that setting up this panel is not merely an administrative exercise. It is a demonstration of the government's commitment to transparency, accountability, and justice. As the Ministry of Interior and as a nation, we recognize that the credibility of our correctional system is central to the rule of law, the security sector, and indeed to public confidence in governance. We also know that the Nigerian Correctional Service is made up of thousands of hardworking men and women who serve with dedication under often very challenging conditions. Our objective is not to tarnish the reputation of the service, but rather to strengthen it by ensuring that the actions of a few do not undermine the integrity of the whole institution. As we proceed, let us be guided by the principles of fairness, objectivity, and the rule of law. The testimonies, evidence, and submissions we will receive in the coming days will be treated with utmost seriousness. Every voice will be heard, every fact will be examined, every recommendation will be made in the interest of justice and institutional reform. I therefore call on all participants, the complainants, witnesses, Nigerian Correctional Service, civil society actors, the media, and members of the public to engage with this process constructively, responsibly, and in good faith. On behalf of the panel, I wish to thank the Ministry of Interior for its unwavering support, and most especially the Honorable Minister, Dr. Lubumi Tunjojo, for his leadership, our development partners for their technical and moral backing, and every Nigerian who has contributed to this process. Let us remember, the measure of a just society is not only how it treats the law-abiding, but also how it treats those in its custody. By strengthening accountability in our correctional system, we strengthen the very foundations of justice in Nigeria. It is on this note that I formally declare this third public hearing of the Independent Investigative Committee on alleged corruption, abuse of power, and other violations against the Nigerian Correctional Service open. I wish us all very productive deliberation and God's guidance throughout these proceedings. I want to thank the media, especially for the coverage that you have given this investigative panel from inception. Thank you very much, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. 8 states was provided by Roland. So we want to thank them. And we also thank all the other NGOs who have supported us in one way or the other, all the agencies that have been here, focus squarely on the issue regarding children and young persons that we find in places where the deprivation of liberty have taken place. We looked at the treatment of these young persons by the correctional service. We looked at the challenges that are faced by the correctional service in terms of implementing the provisions of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019 and the provisions of the standing order in relation to treatment of children, specifically sections 35, subsection 1 and subsection 2 of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019 was referred to. Section 13, subsection 3b, II, as well as subsection 4 of that section 13 were also mentioned, as well as the relevant sections of the standing order. There were clear directives given by the panels in terms of the need to bring a status report relating to all of the bosters that are managed by the Nigerian Correctional Service across the country, including specific directives given in relation to the postal in Ilorin, which has to clearly have a clear categorization as to the status of that facility, whether it is a postal or a halfway home, and to ensure that the classification of inmates will follow that pattern. Specific directive was given in relation to Abeokuta postal, in relation to ensuring that the issue of water and sanitation be equally addressed. The same issue of status report were demanded in relation to all of the postal facilities across the country. It is also important to mention that we discussed the relationship between the Nigerian Correctional Service and state agencies that provide facilities for detention of young persons. Clear strategies were recommended as to what can be done to ensure effective collaboration, especially given the fact that correctional service is now placed in the concurrent legislative list. It was directed that the Nigerian Correctional Service need to do a mapping
of all of the states to identify where the correctional not the custodial facilities for young offenders are established and the status of this. And this information is supposed to be made available to the panel as soon as possible. The final deliberation looked at the informal sector. We looked at what needs to be happening in terms of keeping young offenders in places where are not governed or administered or oversighted by governmental agency. It was mentioned that there is a need to have proper oversight of these facilities, and the need for correctional service to play a role here was also flagged. Issues such as data was discussed, and the Nigerian Correctional Service was commended in terms of its current status in terms of management of data. Issues relating to the provision of support by the rule of law and anti-corruption program of the international ideas relating to statistics, provision of equipment for data, as well as the support towards logistics for the panel was commended. It was also clearly stated that there are still a lot that needs to be done. Partnership was something flagged and should be continued. Specifically, Section 21 and 22 of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019, with specific instructions regarding the 4 different types of visits were flagged, and the need to ensure that the functions of those visiting centers as designated under Section 22 was mentioned, and the necessary resources to make it happen was identified, and as something that needs to be captured within the budget. Clear indications regarding the role of the correctional service, both in terms of identifying the staff needs for its bolster facilities, was mentioned, that this needs to be reflected in the budget if it has not already been done. If it is not in the budget of 2024, that it should be put in the budget of 2025. Same also for the facilities that are required to effectively administer the proper treatment of young offenders within the correctional service purview, and to ensure that all of the good provisions that exist in the law are fully implemented. Finally, there were suggestions regarding the needs to ensure that data in respect to the remand homes and what the state institutions are doing should be known, because at the moment we do not have statistics regarding that. Also, the need to ensure support for diversion, utilization of non-custodial measures, or otherwise known as alternative to imprisonment, should be applied generously for young offenders, and to ensure that oversight are strengthened and made to be on a continuous basis. We're part of the very, very intense discussion that happened this day, Monday, the 11th of August, 2025. This is a brief summary, but just to say to you that you can see that this had been very, very participatory. We've seen data and submissions from the Correctional Service, from different stakeholders, including civil society organizations and the media. We even want more robust participation tomorrow. Tomorrow, starting time is 9 a.m. Please be seated before 9 a.m. I will also plead, 10 a.m. 9 is in my head. 10 a.m. the chairperson said. 10, so we have the grace. The chairperson doesn't want you not to sleep enough. So she said 10 a.m. Please be seated before 10 a.m.